Hi, this is Glenn with another edition of Read and Talk Health, entitled Our Present Work. Let us begin. We should educate ourselves not only to live in harmony with the laws of health, but to teach others the better way. So, this is very important. As God's servant, we should educate ourselves and others to live in harmony with the laws of health. Very important. Many, even of those who profess to believe the special truths for this time, are lamentably ignorant with regard to health and temperance. They need to be educated line upon line, precept upon precept. The subject must be kept fresh before them. This matter must not be passed over as non-essential, for nearly every family needs to be stirred up on the question. So the subject of health reform, very important. We should not pass over it as unimportant, as an unimportant part of the work, but we should be involved in it because the knowledge, the training is needed by almost everyone. The conscience must be aroused to the duty of practicing the principles of true reform. God requires that his people shall be temperate in all things. So, according to the servant of the Lord, God requires that us, as his people, that we should be temperate in all things. Temperance, very important part of God's requirement. God requires his people to be temperate in all things. Unless they practice true temperance, they cannot be susceptible to the sanctifying influence of the truth. So, the sanctifying influence of the truth goes along with temperance, right? So we can't be intemperate and expect to be sanctified by the truth. While the truth is sanctifying us, it will lead us also to be temperate. Our ministers should become intelligent upon this question. They should not ignore it, nor be turned aside by those who call them extremists. Let them find out what constitutes true health reform and teach its principles both by precept and by a quiet, consistent example. So, our ministers, our pastors should also be involved in this work. They should practice health reform and they should teach it by pen and voice. At our large gatherings, instruction should be given upon health and temperance. Seek to arouse the intellect and the conscience. Bring into service all the talent at command and follow up the work with publications upon the subject. Educate, educate, educate is the message that has been impressed upon me. So God has impressed the servant of the Lord with the need to educate our people on the subject of health reform, right? And it is still very important today, no more than ever, especially that the second coming of the Lord is nearer than when we first believed. Health reform principles are very important for the people of God. In all our missions, women of intelligence should have charge of the domestic arrangements. Women who know how to prepare food nicely and healthfully. The table should be abundantly supplied with food of the best quality. If any have a perverted taste that craves tea, coffee, condiments, and unhealthful dishes. Enlighten them. Seek to arouse the conscience. Set before them the principles of the Bible upon hygiene. Where plenty of good milk and fruit can be obtained, there is rarely any excuse for eating animal food. It is not necessary to take the life of any of God's creatures to supply our ordinary needs. In certain cases of illness or exhaustion, it may be thought best to use some meat, but great care should be taken to secure the flesh of healthy animals. It has come to be a very serious question whether it is safe to use flesh food at all in this age of the world. It would be better never to eat meat than to use the flesh of animals that are not healthy. When I could not obtain the food I needed, I have sometimes eaten a little meat, but I am becoming more and more afraid of it. When God led the children of Israel out of Egypt, it was His purpose to establish them in the land of Canaan, a pure, happy, healthy people. Let us look at the means by which He would accomplish this. He subjected them to a course of discipline, which, had it been cheerfully followed, would have resulted in good, both to themselves and to their posterity. He removed flesh food from them in a great measure. He had granted them flesh in answer to their clamors just before reaching Sinai, but it was furnished for only one day. God might have provided flesh as easily as manna, but a restriction was placed upon the people for their good. It was His purpose to supply them with food better suited to their wants than the feverish diet to which many of them had been accustomed in Egypt. So, as God led the children of Israel out of Egypt, as they were on their journey to the promised land, the Lord, who could have easily supplied them with meat just as easily as He could have as He supplied them with manna, chose to supply them with manna because the meat diet was not the best diet for them. So God gave them what was best, and from that example we can see that the flesh diet is not the best for us today either. The perverted appetite was to be brought into a more healthy state, that they might enjoy the food originally provided for man, the fruits of the earth which God gave to Adam and Eve in Eden. Had they been willing to deny appetite in obedience to His restrictions, feebleness and disease would have been unknown among them. Their descendants would have possessed physical and mental strength. They would have had clear perceptions of truth and duty, keen discrimination, and sound judgment. But they were unwilling to submit to God's requirements, and they failed to reach the standard He had set for them and to receive the blessings that might have been theirs. So God's restrictions are for our good, and if we follow what the Lord say, we will be richly blessed. They murmured at God's restrictions and lusted after the flesh pots of Egypt. God let them have flesh, but it proved a curse to them. Again and again, I have been shown that God is trying to lead us back, step by step, to his original design, that man should subsist upon the natural products of the earth. So, my brothers and sisters, God is leading back his people to the original design that he had, that we should subsist on the natural products of the earth rather than on flesh eating, which is so common and such a curse in this age in which we live. Among those who are waiting for the coming of the Lord, meat eating will eventually be done away. Flesh will cease to form a part of their diet. So, Seventh-day Adventists, we are certainly looking forward to the coming of the Lord. So here we are told that for such persons, the direction in which we should be heading is to put away meat eating out of our diet completely. We should ever keep this end in view and endeavor to work steadily toward it. So this concerns the eating of flesh. We should ever consider that the Lord is leading us back to subsist on the natural products of the earth and to leave flesh behind. So we should keep this in mind, keep this in view as a goal, and we should endeavor to work steadily toward it. I cannot think that in the practice of flesh eating, we are in harmony with the light which God has been pleased to give us. All who are connected with our health institutions, especially, should be educating themselves to subsist on fruits, grains, and vegetables. If we move from principle in these things, if we are Christian reformers, educate our own taste and bring our diet to God's plan, then we may exert an influence upon others in this matter, which will be pleasing to God. One reason why many have become discouraged in practicing health reform is that they have not learned how to cook so that proper food, simply prepared, would supply the place of the diet to which they have been accustomed. So, as health reformers, we need to learn how to cook properly, how to cook the things properly. And because we don't know how to cook the things properly, because we have not learned how to cook the things properly, we become discouraged and want to turn back to flesh eating. But we should do our best to learn how to cook properly. They become disgusted with the poorly prepared dishes, and next we hear them say that they have tried the health reform and cannot live in that way. Many attempt to follow out meager instructions in health reform and make such sad work that it results in injury to digestion and in discouragement to all concerned in the attempt. You profess to be health reformers, and for this very reason, you should become good cooks, right? So health reformers, we want to learn how to cook properly, how to be good cooks. Those who can avail themselves of the advantages of properly conducted hygienic cooking schools will find it a great benefit, both in their own practice and in teaching others. So it would be good if you can go to a cooking school, right? Learn to cook. properly. Do not catch hold of isolated ideas and make them a test, criticizing others whose practice may not agree with your opinion. But study the subject broadly and deeply and seek to bring your own ideas and practices into perfect harmony with the principles of true Christian temperance. There are many who try to correct the lives of others by attacking what they regard as wrong habits. They go to those whom they think in error and point out their defects, but do not seek to direct the mind to true principles. Such a course often comes far short of securing the desired results. When we make it evident that we are trying to correct others, we too often arouse their combativeness and do more harm than good. And there is danger to the reprover also. He who takes it upon himself to correct others is likely to cultivate a habit of fault finding, and soon his whole interest will be in picking flaws and finding defects. Do not watch others to pick at their faults or expose their errors. Educate them to better habits by the power of your own example. Let it ever be kept before the mind that the great object of hygienic reform is to secure the highest possible development of mind, soul, and body. So, this is a very important point. The reason why God has given us health reform is so that we may secure the highest possible development of every area of our life. All the laws of nature, which are the laws of God, are designed for our good. Obedience to them will promote our happiness in this life and will aid us in a preparation for the life to come. Very important. There is something better to talk about than the faults and weaknesses of others. Talk of God and his wonderful works. Study into the manifestations of his love and wisdom in all the works of nature. Study that the marvelous organism, the human system, and the laws by which it is governed. Those who perceive the evidences of God's love, who understand something of the wisdom and beneficence of his laws, and the blessings that result from obedience, will come to regard their duties and obligations from an altogether different point of view. Instead of looking upon an observance of the laws of health as a matter of sacrifice or self-denial, they will regard it as it really is, an inestimable blessing. So, the laws of health that God has given to us is for our good. If we practice them, then we will see and realize that they are a great blessing. A great amount of good can be done by enlightening all to whom we have access as to the best means, not only of curing the sick, but of preventing disease and suffering. The physician who endeavors to enlighten his patients as to the nature and cause of their maladies and to teach them how to avoid disease may have uphill work. But if he is a conscientious reformer, He will talk plainly of the ruinous effects of self-indulgence in eating, drinking, and dressing, of the overtaxation of the vital forces that has brought his patients where they are. He will not increase the evil by administering drugs till exhausted nature gives up the struggle, but will teach the patients how to form correct habits and to aid nature in her work of restoration by a wise use of her own simple remedies. Right? So there should be teaching the people that self-indulgence, that in eating, drinking, and dressing, overtaxation of the vital powers, these harmful practices lead to sickness. So we want to develop right habits, habits that are in harmony with the laws of health, so that we can prevent sickness and teach others to prevent it as well. In all our health institutions, it should be made a special feature of the work to give instruction in regard to the laws of health. The principles of health reform should be carefully and thoroughly set before all, both patients and helpers. This work requires moral courage, for while many will profit by such efforts, others will be offended. But the true disciple of Christ, he whose mind is in harmony with the mind of God, while constantly learning, will be teaching as well, leading the minds of others upward, away from the prevailing errors of the world. Much of the prejudice that prevents the truth of the third angel's message from reaching the hearts of the people might be removed if more attention were given to health reform. So if we were practicing and teaching health reform, it would open the way and make it easier for us to give the people the third angel's message. Right? Very important. Health reform is as the hand that is, as we say, the right arm of the third angel's message. When people become interested in this subject, the way is often prepared for the entrance of other truths. If they see that we are intelligent with regard to health, they will be more ready to believe that we are sound in Bible doctrines. This branch of the Lord's work has not received due attention, and through this neglect, much has been lost. So if we were practicing and teaching the health reform, we would be way ahead of where we are today. If the church would manifest a greater interest in the reforms through which God Himself is seeking to fit them for His coming, their influence would be far greater than it now is. God has spoken to His people, and He designs that they shall hear and obey His voice. Although the health reform is not the third angel's message, it is closely connected with it. Those who proclaim the message should teach health reform also. It is a subject that we must understand in order to be prepared for the events that are close upon us, and it should have a prominent place. So the teaching of health reform cannot be stressed that it is very important to our work as proclaimers of the gospel, and it should have a prominent place. Satan and his agents are seeking to hinder this work of reform and will do all they can to perplex and burden those who heartily engage in it. Yet none should be discouraged at this or cease their efforts because of it. The prophet Isaiah speaks thus of one characteristic of Christ. Pay keen attention. He said, "He shall not fail nor be discouraged till he have set judgment in the earth." Isaiah 42 verse 4. Then let not his followers talk of failure or discouragement, but remember the price paid to rescue man, that he might not perish but have eternal life. So health reform, very important to our work, and we will encounter opposition as we seek to teach it and to follow out God's plan in regards. But we should not be discouraged, because like Christ, the work will not fail, and the workers should not be discouraged, because Christ is leading the work. God bless you. See you next time.